The Temple of Celestia stood as a testament to time itself, its crystalline spires reaching toward the three moons of Lumia like fingers grasping for divinity. For 8,000 years, the Lumian people had perfected their martial art. The unparalleled light, a discipline that merged physical movement with the manipulation of light energy. The temple walls, constructed from luminescent crystal that pulsed with the collective consciousness of generations, had never known the touch of outsiders until today. Kai, a slender warrior with skin that shimmered with a faint blue luminescence, stood at the temple entrance. His white robes flowed around him like liquid silver, and the traditional ceremonial headpiece, resembling an abstract crown of light, marked him as an instructor of the third tier. Today was his first assignment as Earth's designated guide, a responsibility he had trained decades for. "The human representative will arrive momentarily," announced the temple sentinel, her voice reverberating through the crystal hall. "The council awaits in the chamber of first light." Kai nodded, his expression serene despite the fluttering in his chest. Humans were still relatively new to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 30 years ago. Their diplomatic relations with other species were still in their infancy, marked by equal parts enthusiasm and missteps. Teaching a human the sacred martial art of the Lumians was unprecedented, a gesture of goodwill that some on the council had strongly opposed. A flash of blue light signaled the activation of the teleportation pad. Kai straightened his posture, prepared to greet the human with the formal bow of welcome that had been practiced for millennia. The light coalesced into a humanoid shape, then solidified into a man wearing what appeared to be casual Earth attire, loose-fitting pants called jeans, a tight-fitting upper garment with the phrase, "I flexed and the sleeves fell off," and a backward cap with the emblem of an Earth sports team. He carried a duffel bag slung over one shoulder. "Sup," said the human, looking around with wide eyes at the crystalline architecture. "This place is lit, literally glowing. That's dope." Kai blinked slowly, his rehearsed greeting momentarily forgotten. This was Tom, Earth's chosen representative to learn the sacred art of unparalleled light. "I am Kai, your assigned instructor," he finally managed, performing the formal bow. "It is an honor to—" "High five, my dude," Tom interrupted, raising his palm in the air. When Kai stared at it uncomprehendingly, Tom simply grabbed Kai's hand and slapped it against his own. "That's how we do it on Earth. Cultural exchange, am I right?" Kai felt the first tremor of concern ripple through him. The council members were traditionalists who had maintained the purity of their practices for millennia. This human seemed to embody precisely what the elders feared: irreverence. "Tom, I must prepare you for the welcome ceremony. The Grand Council has arranged a traditional procession to honor your arrival. It is essential that you—"
"Lead the way, Blue Man. I'm stoked to meet the big cheeses."
Kai winced at the casual language but nodded, guiding Tom through the luminescent corridors. As they walked, Kai attempted to brief the human on proper protocol. "When we enter the Grand Chamber, you must bow deeply and remain silent until the Grand Master addresses you. Then, you may recite the traditional greeting I taught you during our preliminary communications." Tom nodded, suddenly looking a bit more serious. "Got it. Formal stuff. I can do formal." The Grand Chamber was a vast amphitheater carved from a single colossal crystal, with seating for hundreds of Lumian masters arranged in concentric circles. At the center stood the 5 members of the High Council, led by Grandmaster Seraphina, whose age was measured in centuries rather than years. Beside her stood Master Salus, the most vocal opponent of the human exchange program, his face set in a permanent expression of stern disapproval. The Lumians had gathered for the ceremonial procession, their bodies forming patterns of light that were both beautiful and mathematically precise. The entire scene was one of perfect order and harmony, a living embodiment of the Lumian philosophy of disciplined perfection. Kai and Tom entered through the grand archway, and all eyes turned toward them. A hushed silence fell over the assembly as the human was beheld for the first time. Kai stepped forward and bowed deeply. Esteemed council, I present Tom of Earth, chosen representative to learn the ways of unparalleled light. This was Tom's cue to bow and recite the formal greeting. Instead, there was a moment of silence, followed by a sound Kai had never heard in the sacred chamber before. A whispered, "Watch this," and then the slap of hands against the crystal floor. In one fluid motion, Tom executed what would later be described in the temple records as a backflip, launching his body into a complete backward rotation in the air before landing with his arms spread wide. Fingers pointed outward in what he would later explain was a gesture called finger guns. "What's up, Lumia?" Tom's voice echoed through the silent chamber. "Earth has entered the chat." The collective gasp from hundreds of Lumian throats created a sound like a sudden wind through crystal chimes. Grandmaster Seraphina's eyes widened slightly, the Lumian equivalent of profound shock. Master Silas's face darkened to a deep purple, a sign of intense displeasure. Kai felt as though the floor beneath him might open up and swallow him whole. In 8,000 years of Lumian history, no one had ever disrupted the welcome ceremony with acrobatics and casual earth slang. "This," Master Silas said, his voice cutting through the shocked silence, "is precisely why humans are not ready for our sacred knowledge." Grandmaster Seraphina raised a hand, silencing him. Her gaze, ancient and penetrating, fixed on Tom, who was still grinning, apparently oblivious to the cultural catastrophe he had just instigated. "Human," she said, her voice carrying the weight of millennia. "You stand in the most sacred chamber of Lumian culture. The welcome ceremony has remained unchanged for 8,000 years. Your demonstration suggests a fundamental misunderstanding of our ways." Tom's smile faltered slightly. "My bad. I was just trying to show some Earth-style enthusiasm. No disrespect intended." The Grandmaster's expression remained impassive. "The Council must deliberate on whether this exchange can proceed." She turned to Kai. "You have 1 month to instill in this human a basic understanding of our discipline and respect for our traditions. If he cannot master even the foundational movements and demonstrate proper reverence, he will be returned to Earth, and the exchange program terminated." Kai bowed deeply, his heart sinking. "Yes, Grandmaster." As they were dismissed and led from the chamber, Kai could feel the weight of 8,000 years of tradition bearing down on his shoulders. How could he possibly teach someone like Tom the discipline and reverence required for unparalleled light when the human couldn't even make it through a simple welcome ceremony without performing aerial acrobatics? "So," Tom said as they walked down the corridor, seemingly unfazed by what had just transpired, "when do we start the kung fu?" "It is not kung fu," Kai replied, his voice strained. "It is unparalleled light, a discipline that has been perfected over 8,000 years. Got it," Tom finished for him. "Look, I'm sorry about the flip thing. On Earth, making a good entrance is important. I was trying to impress them. By violating sacred protocol, I didn't know backflips were against the rules. Your briefing materials were, like, 200 pages of history and philosophy. I might have skimmed some parts." Kai sighed. This was going to be more challenging than he had anticipated. "We begin at dawn tomorrow. The first form you must master is called Still Waters Cascade. It is traditionally the introductory movement that takes most Lumian children a full year to perfect." Tom grinned. "A year? Challenge accepted? I'll nail it in a week." Kai looked at the human with a mixture of disbelief and grudging curiosity. Perhaps there was something to be said for human confidence, misplaced though it might be. The training quarters assigned to Tom were modest by Lumian standards. A crystal-walled chamber with simple furnishings that responded to thought patterns. adjusting to the occupant's needs. Tom spent the first 10 minutes jumping on the morphing bed, watching it reshape itself to accommodate his movements. "This is like memory foam on steroids," he exclaimed, bouncing one final time before flopping onto his back. "So, Kai, level with me. How bad did I mess up today?" Kai, who had been standing by the doorway with rigid posture, allowed his shoulders to slump slightly. In the 8,000 years of the temple's existence, no one has ever performed acrobatics during the welcome ceremony.
So I made history. That's something, right?
That is one interpretation, Kai conceded, unable to prevent a small smile from forming. There was something oddly refreshing about the human's irrepressible spirit. "But now we must focus on your training. The Council's challenge is no small matter. Master Silas, in particular, will be looking for any reason to send you back to Earth." Tom sat up, his expression suddenly more serious. "Hey, I may joke around, but I take this opportunity seriously. Earth needs allies like the Lumians. We're still new to this whole galactic community thing, and some of the other species out there," he whistled. "Let's just say they're not all friendly." Kai nodded, appreciating this glimpse of depth beneath Tom's carefree exterior. "Then we must begin immediately. The Still Waters Cascade is a sequence of 17 movements that channel light energy through precise body positions." Tom stood up, stretching his arms above his head. "Show me what you got, Blue Man." The following morning began before the first of Lumia's 3 suns had risen over the horizon. Kai arrived at Tom's quarters to find the human already awake, performing a series of stretching exercises unfamiliar to Lumian practice. "This is yoga," Tom explained, his body contorted into what he called downward dog. "Helps with flexibility. Figured I'd need it." They proceeded to the training pavilion, an open platform at the edge of the temple grounds, where the first light of morning would soon illuminate their practice. The air was cool and still, carrying the faint scent of the luminescent flora that surrounded the temple. Kai demonstrated the opening stance of Still Waters Cascade, a seemingly simple position with precise angles of the arms, legs, and torso that created channels for light energy to flow. "The key," Kai explained, "is absolute stillness combined with internal movement. Your body remains in perfect position, while your energy flows like water cascading down a mountainside." Tom attempted to mimic the stance, but his posture was immediately wrong. Shoulders too tense, weight distribution uneven, angles imprecise. No, Kai corrected, adjusting Tom's arm position. "The angle must be exactly 73 degrees, not 70. The energy cannot flow properly otherwise." Tom held the corrected position for about 30 seconds before his muscles began to tremble. "Dude, this is harder than it looks." "It is meant to be. The body must learn perfect discipline." Over the next 3 days, Tom struggled with even the most basic positions. His human physiology, while adaptable, lacked the natural luminescence of Lumian bodies, making the energy flow harder to visualize and direct. His attempts at the Still Waters Cascade looked less like a serene flow of energy and more like a human trying very hard not to fall over. On the 4th day, as Tom once again failed to maintain the proper 73-degree angle in his arm position, Master Silas appeared at the edge of the training pavilion, watching with thinly veiled satisfaction. "As I predicted," he commented to Kai, loud enough for Tom to hear. "Humans lack the discipline and precision necessary for our sacred art. Their bodies are too dense, their minds too scattered." Tom, who had been in the middle of yet another failed attempt at the opening stance, straightened up and wiped sweat from his brow. "With all due respect, Master Silas, maybe the problem isn't with humans but with the teaching method." Silas's skin darkened to a shade of indignant purple. "The methods have been perfected over
8,000 years. Yeah, I got that memo,"
Tom interrupted. But has anyone ever considered that maybe there's room for improvement? The silence that followed was so profound that even the gentle hum of the crystal architecture seemed to pause in shock. Improvement, Celis repeated, as though the word itself was offensive. You suggest improving what has been perfected through 8 millennia of dedicated practice. Tom shrugged. I'm just saying. Maybe the 73-degree angle works great for Lumian physiology, but human joints and muscles might operate better at a slightly different angle. It's basic biomechanics. Celis looked as though he might spontaneously combust. The angles are not arbitrary. They are mathematically derived from the cosmic constants that govern the flow of light energy. Cool, Tom nodded. But have you ever tried a 75-degree angle just to see what happens? Kai, sensing the dangerous territory they were entering, quickly intervened. Master Celis, perhaps we could consult the archives for any historical precedents of teaching non-Lumian species. Celis's gaze shifted from Tom to Kai, his expression making it clear that he now considered both of them borderline heretical. There are no precedents because there has never been a need. Our ways are perfect as they are. With that, he turned and strode away, his robes billowing behind him. Once he was out of earshot, Tom exhaled loudly. Not a big fan of constructive criticism, is he? Kai sighed. You must understand, Tom, the Lumians value tradition and perfection above all else. Suggesting change is unsettling to them. Well, at this rate, I'm never going to master this still waters whatever in time. We need to try something different. That evening, Tom requested access to the temple's knowledge archives, a vast repository of historical records, scientific data, and philosophical texts stored in crystal memory matrices. To Kai's surprise, the council granted permission, perhaps seeing it as an opportunity for the human to better understand Lumian culture and history. What they hadn't anticipated was that Tom would approach the archives not as a student of philosophy, but as a problem solver. He spent hours analyzing the mathematical principles behind the still waters cascade, cross-referencing them with human anatomical data he had brought on a personal device. Check this out, Tom said excitedly on the morning of the 5th day, projecting a holographic model from his Earth device. I've been running simulations all night. The 73-degree angle works for Lumians because your shoulder joints have a different rotational capacity than humans. But if I adjust to 76.5 degrees and compensate with a slight shift in hip positioning, I can create the same energy channel. Kai stared at the projection, a complex mathematical model that merged Lumian energy theory with human physiology. It was unorthodox, certainly, but the underlying principles were sound. This is actually quite impressive, he admitted. But the council would never approve of altering the forms. They don't need to know I'm altering them, Tom winked. As long as the end result looks the same, right? Kai hesitated. Technically, Tom wasn't wrong. If the energy flow was correctly channeled, the outward appearance of the form would be nearly identical. Only a master with centuries of experience might notice the subtle differences. Let us try your approach, he finally conceded. To Kai's astonishment, Tom's modified stance worked. By adjusting the angles to better suit human physiology, Tom was able to maintain the position without trembling and began to feel what he described as a weird tingling that Kai confirmed was the beginning of energy flow. Over the next week, Tom applied the same analytical approach to each movement of the still waters cascade. He recorded Kai's demonstrations, analyzed them frame by frame, and made subtle adjustments to accommodate human biomechanics. He incorporated elements of what he called breakdancing to help with the transitions between positions, and used concepts from physics to optimize the energy flow. Gravity works differently here than on Earth, Tom explained, as he successfully executed a particularly difficult transition. Your planet has about 85% of Earth's gravitational pull, which means I can use that to my advantage in the flowing movements. By the end of the second week, Tom had mastered not only the Stillwater's cascade, but had begun work on the second foundational form, galaxy vortex, a more dynamic sequence that involved circular movements representing the spiral arms of galaxies. Kai was both impressed and slightly concerned. Tom was learning at an unprecedented rate, but his methods were highly unorthodox. Instead of spending years internalizing the philosophical principles behind each movement, he was approaching the forms as physics problems to be solved. "The body follows the mind," Tom said one evening as they reviewed his progress. "That's what all your ancient texts say, right? Well, my mind works with data and analysis, so I'm just using my own mental framework to achieve the same physical results." Kai couldn't argue with the results. Tom's execution of the forms was becoming fluid and effective, if slightly different in subtle ways from traditional Lumian practice. The energy channels were forming correctly, and Tom had even begun to manifest small pulses of light from his fingertips during practice, a milestone that usually took Lumian children several years to achieve. Word of the humans' unusual progress spread through the temple, drawing curious observers to their training sessions. Some were horrified by Tom's unorthodox methods, while others were fascinated. Master Silas remained firmly in the former camp, watching from a distance with increasing displeasure. "This is not the way," he declared, after witnessing Tom incorporate a modified breakdance move into the galaxy vortex form. "You are teaching him tricks, not discipline." "With respect, Master Silas," Kai replied, choosing his words carefully. "The human is successfully channeling light energy. His methods may be unconventional, but the results align with our traditions." Silas's skin darkened. "Results without proper reverence for the process are meaningless. He treats our sacred art like a puzzle to be solved, rather than a path to be walked." Tom, overhearing this exchange, approached with uncharacteristic seriousness. "Master Silas, I respect your traditions, but where I come from, we have a saying, 'Different strokes for different folks,' means everyone has their own way of learning and doing things. Our way has remained unchanged for 8,000 years. "Yes," Tom nodded. "And that's impressive. But think about it. In all that time, you've only ever taught Lumians. Maybe teaching other species requires some flexibility." "Flexibility," Silas repeated, as though the word tasted bitter. "Our art is not meant to be flexible." "But shouldn't it be?" Tom pressed. "The universe is constantly changing and adapting. Stars are born and die. Galaxies collide and form new patterns. If the unparalleled light is meant to be in harmony with the cosmos, shouldn't it also adapt when needed?" Silas had no immediate response to this philosophical challenge. He simply stared at Tom with an unreadable expression before turning to leave. "I think you actually got through to him a little," Kai remarked after Silas had gone. Tom grinned. "Nah, he still thinks I'm a heretic. But that's okay. Actions speak louder than words. When the time comes to demonstrate what I've learned, I'll show him that innovation doesn't mean disrespect." The mid-month demonstration arrived more quickly than Kai had anticipated. The council had scheduled a formal assessment of Tom's progress, to be held in the same grand chamber where the human had made his disastrous first impression. The night before, Tom was unusually quiet, practicing his forms with intense concentration in the privacy of his quarters. "Are you concerned about tomorrow's demonstration?" Kai asked. Tom looked up, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Not concerned. Planning. I've been working on something special, a way to show the council that I've not only learned their art, but found a way to enhance it." Kai felt a flutter of alarm. "Tom, the council is expecting a traditional demonstration. Any deviation might be seen as disrespectful." "Trust me, Kai, what I'm planning isn't disrespectful. It's a tribute, but with a twist." He performed a movement that looked similar to the galaxy vortex, but incorporated a spinning motion that Kai had never seen before. As Tom's body rotated, tiny points of light spiraled outward from his fingertips in a pattern that was both beautiful and mathematically complex. "How are you doing that?" Kai asked, amazed. The light manipulation was far beyond what a beginner should be capable of. "I figured out that if I use centrifugal force while channeling the energy, I can create these spiral patterns. It's all about physics and flow. Man." Kai watched as Tom repeated the movement, this time adding what appeared to be a handstand transition that sent the light spirals shooting upward in a fountain-like effect. "The council might not approve of these innovations," Kai warned. Tom landed back on his feet, grinning. "Maybe not at first, but they can't argue with results. That's the thing about traditions. They all started as innovations that worked so well they stuck around." The grand chamber was filled to capacity the next day. Every master and student in the temple had gathered to witness the humans' demonstration. The 5 council members sat in their elevated seats, with Grandmaster Serafina at the center and Master Celis to her right. Kai stood at the edge of the performance area, trying to project an air of confidence despite his inner apprehension. Tom had refused to reveal exactly what he planned to demonstrate, saying only that it would blow their crystalline minds. Tom entered the chamber, wearing the traditional training garments of a Lumian novice, though he had retained his backward cap, claiming it was for luck. He bowed deeply to the council, then assumed the opening stance of the still waters cascade with perfect form, or what appeared to be perfect form to most observers. Kai knew he was using his modified 76.5-degree angle, but the difference was nearly imperceptible. The audience watched in respectful silence as Tom flowed through the 17 movements of the still waters cascade. His execution was fluid and precise, with energy visibly channeling through the correct pathways. Even Master Celis's expression had shifted from skepticism to grudging acknowledgement. When Tom completed the still waters cascade, there was a murmur of approval from the assembled Lumians. It was clear that the human had mastered the foundational form, an impressive achievement in just 2 weeks. Tom then moved seamlessly into the galaxy vortex form, his body creating the circular patterns that represented cosmic spirals. This, too, he performed with remarkable proficiency, his movements graceful despite the physiological differences between humans and Lumians. Grandmaster Serafina nodded slightly, a sign of approval that carried enormous weight in Lumian culture. It seemed the demonstration was a success. But Tom wasn't finished. Instead of concluding with the traditional final pose of the galaxy vortex, he transitioned into something entirely new. His body began to move in ways the Lumians had never seen, incorporating elements of breakdancing, martial arts from Earth, and the fundamental principles of unparalleled light, all synthesized into something unique. The audience gasped as Tom executed a series of spins on his hands, his legs creating circular patterns in the air, while light energy spiraled outward from his feet, a complete inversion of traditional technique. He transitioned to a one-handed freeze position, his body perfectly balanced while energy pulsed from his free hand in rhythmic waves. The light energy he was channeling began to behave in unexpected ways, forming complex geometric patterns that hung in the air like luminescent sculptures. As Tom moved through his improvised form, the patterns multiplied and interacted, creating a 3-dimensional light show that filled the chamber. Master Celis rose from his seat, his skin cycling through shades of purple and blue, indicating a complex mix of outrage and astonishment. "This is not unparalleled light," he declared. This is evolution." Grandmaster Serafina finished for him, her ancient eyes fixed on the display with undisguised fascination. Tom's finale was his most daring innovation yet. Drawing on principles of physics that he had studied in the archives, he created what he would later call the ultimate gravity technique. By rapidly alternating between centrifugal and centripetal forces, while channeling energy through precise pathways. He generated a localized gravitational field, twice as strong as Lumia's natural gravity. The visual effect was stunning. Light bent around him in ways that defied conventional understanding, creating the illusion that he was manipulating the fabric of space itself. When he finally came to rest in the traditional concluding pose, with his own modifications for human physiology, the chamber was completely silent. For several long moments, no one spoke. The council members exchanged glances, communicating in the subtle eye movements that Lumians used for private conversation. Finally, Grandmaster Serafina rose from her seat. "Human," she addressed Tom directly, "you were tasked with learning our ways. Instead, you have transformed them." Tom maintained the concluding pose, awaiting judgment. "With respect, Grandmaster, I did learn your ways. I studied the mathematical principles, the energy flows, the philosophical foundations. I just adapted them to work with human physiology and added some earth flavor. The techniques you demonstrated, particularly the gravity manipulation, are beyond what many of our masters can achieve after centuries of study," she continued. "How did you develop this in mere weeks?" Tom finally relaxed his pose, standing normally. "On Earth, we have a different relationship with rules. We see them as starting points, not ending points. When something doesn't work for us, we don't just give up. We find another way. I used physics, mathematics, and movements from Earth's martial arts to bridge the gap between Lumian and human capabilities." Master Silas stepped forward. "This is precisely why humans are dangerous. They take what is sacred and twist it to their own purposes without regard for tradition. Or," countered Grandmaster Serafina, "they bring fresh perspectives to traditions that have perhaps become too rigid." She turned to address the full council. "In 8,000 years, our art has remained unchanged because we have remained unchanged. Perhaps this human has shown us the value of adaptation." The council deliberated in private for several hours, while Tom and Kai waited in an antechamber. Tom seemed remarkably unconcerned, practicing small light manipulations with his fingertips while humming earth music. "Aren't you worried?" Kai asked, pacing nervously. "You completely redesigned sacred techniques that have remained unchanged for 8,000 years." "I know," Tom finished for him. "But here's the thing, Kai. Nothing stays the same forever. Not even stars. Change is the only constant in the universe." Finally, they were summoned back to the Grand Chamber. The council had reached a decision. Grandmaster Serafina addressed the assembly. "For 8 millennia, the unparalleled light has illuminated our path. We have preserved its purity through unchanging dedication to form and principle. Today, we witnessed something unprecedented, a being from another world who not only learned our ways, but found new potential within them." She turned to Tom. "Human, your demonstration has divided the council. Some see it as disrespectful innovation. Others see it as brilliant adaptation. But none can deny the effectiveness of your techniques or the light energy you successfully channeled." Master Silas, whose expression had softened somewhat during the deliberation, spoke next. "I have opposed this exchange from the beginning, believing humans too impulsive and irreverent for our sacred art. I still believe this." He paused, his gaze fixed on Tom. "However, I cannot deny that your innovations have merit. The gravity technique, in particular, demonstrates an understanding of principles that goes beyond mere imitation. The Council has decided," Grandmaster Serafina continued, "that this exchange program will continue. Furthermore, we wish to formally recognize your contributions by allowing you to name the hybrid style you have developed, a style that merges Lumian tradition with human innovation." Tom's face broke into a broad grin. "Seriously? I get to name it?" "It is our tradition that the creator of a new form names it," she confirmed. Tom thought for a moment, then declared with complete seriousness, I name it Chad Fu. A confused murmur rippled through the assembly. Grandmaster Serafina tilted her head slightly. Chad? Fu? Yeah, Tom nodded enthusiastically. On Earth, a Chad represents someone who confidently goes their own way and succeeds against expectations. And Fu is from Kung Fu, which is a general term for martial arts on Earth. So, Chad Fu, the art of confidently breaking barriers. Kai suppressed a smile, wondering if the council would accept such an unconventional name. To his surprise, Grandmaster Serafina nodded solemnly. Then it shall be recorded in our archives. The hybrid discipline pioneered by Tom of Earth shall be known as Chad Fu, and shall be taught alongside traditional unparalleled light to those who wish to learn it. And so began a new chapter in the 8,000-year history of the Temple of Celestia. Tom was granted the title of Chad Fu Master, the first of his kind. Under his guidance, a select group of open-minded Lumian students began to study the hybrid discipline, while Tom continued to deepen his understanding of traditional unparalleled light. Master Celis, to everyone's surprise, became one of Tom's most engaged collaborators, his initial resistance giving way to scholarly curiosity about the possibilities of adaptation. Together, they developed new training methodologies that made Lumian techniques more accessible to other species, expanding the reach of their ancient wisdom throughout the galactic community. The Temple of Celestia, once a secluded bastion of unchanging tradition, became a center for cultural exchange, where beings from across the galaxy came to study both the ancient, unparalleled light and its innovative offshoot, Chad Fu. As for Kai, he found himself promoted to master status for his role in facilitating this historic transformation. He often reflected on the strange twist of fate that had assigned him to guide the irreverent human who had backflipped his way into Lumian history. You know, Tom said to him one evening as they watched the 3 moons rise over the temple spires, back on Earth, there's this saying, the master has failed more times than the beginner has even tried. Kai considered this. A wise perspective, though I suspect the council might add, and has learned from each failure. Exactly, Tom agreed. That's the beauty of Chad Fu. It's all about trying new angles, failing spectacularly, and then figuring out why you failed so you can innovate something better. A philosophy that would have been considered heretical just months ago, Kai noted. And now it's officially in your 8,000-year-old archives. Tom grinned, performing a small, light manipulation that formed the words Chad Fu in glowing letters above his palm. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor. As the light letters dissipated into the evening air, Kai couldn't help but agree. Perhaps the greatest lesson of unparalleled light, and now Chad Fu, was that illumination came in many forms, some of them completely unexpected. In the grand cosmic scheme, 8,000 years was but a moment. Traditions endured, not because they remained frozen in time, but because they contained truths worth preserving, truths that could be expressed in new ways without losing their essence. Tom had not disrespected the ancient art. He had honored it by proving its principles were universal enough to transcend biological differences and cultural boundaries. The Temple of Celestia still stood as a testament to time itself. But now, its crystalline spires reached toward the 3 moons of Lumia with a new understanding. That perfection was not a final state to be achieved and preserved, but an ongoing journey of discovery and adaptation. And somewhere in the vastness of the cosmos, perhaps the universe itself was doing the equivalent of finger guns and saying, "That's how it's done."